There we
Perfect.
Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you, and I'm so glad. For those of you who don't know, we weren't even sure if Meghan was going to be able to join us because of your voice, but you managed, you powered and muscled through it, and you were able to make it. So I'm really looking forward to it. Meghan is joining us. She's the Global Vice President of PreSales at Amplitude. So without further ado, to catch up on time, I'm just going to hand it over to you. And just like always, I will be right here if you need anything from me.
Okay.
For everybody, let's give a round of emojis and chat to get this one rolling.
Yeah, I might need another voice, but we'll see how this goes.
So I will chime in on whatever you need. Just let me know.
All right. So let's get this going here. There we go. All right. Can everybody see my screen?
Chris, we can see it. Yes.
Okay,
we can see it. You are sharing live.
All right. Well, super great to be here. I know it's going to be hard to understand me, but you know, my husband actually likes this husky voice. So I'm going to go with it. Before we get started, though, I wanted to publish a little poll to kind of gauge who is here in the room, because I can't see your faces and wouldn't judge anyway, but wanted to find out, since our topic is generational, what generation our audience is, Chris. So I put a quick poll in the chat.
And I pulled it up on stage so everybody can see it.
Oh, there we go. All right. So answer accordingly. Looks like.
I want to know the three folks who we actually have a surprising percentage that aren't sure what generation they're in. But we've got a healthy mix.
That's why I added it. I have no clue is okay with me.
I have no clue. I like it.
Yeah.
Other. There we go. All right. So yeah, I don't know if can you see the results?
Yes, I can. So it looks like
I have no clue is actually beating Gen Z. That is impressive.
I have no clue, and other collectively are beating Gen Z. Maybe people don't know. I should have put the years, but that's okay. Actually, you know, shout out to my Gen Xers on the line there. But it's really great to see actually the diversity of generations in the audience today. Well, so if you don't know, you know, just Google that, right? As any good Gen Z would say. All right, so let's close this poll and get started. I wanted to, you know, ask for a couple of reasons, and I don't know if you have to put my presentation back up there.
You have to hide or no, you're sharing now, so we can see your screen. You just flip.
Oh, you can see me. Okay.
Yeah.
How about that?
There you go. You are good.
There we go. So the reason I wanted to, you know, ask that is obviously the topic for today is microlearning and Gen Z. It's actually one of my favorite topics. It's something that I have taken some time to learn a little bit about. Is this newer generation coming into the workplace? I mean, I remember for the millennials on the line, I remember when we were talking about millennials a lot. Does this still happen? I think it does. And, you know, marketers were, you know, trying to figure out how to market to millennials. They're this new generation, and now they have computers, right? And so on. And now, you know, fast forward to today, I'm sitting here thinking, okay, well, but there's another generation, and these folks have grown up in addition to computers with so much more. So from an enablement and learning perspective, I think there's a lot of activity, a lot of conversation. I heard some flavor of it through the last two presentations about this generation and how to enable and teach them, you know, different concepts. And so, you know, I'm glad to be here to share my thoughts on Gen Z, but also microlearning and how I think these two fit very well together, sort of hand in glove. So let's dive in. So, you know, whoops. We'll cover a couple of things. I'll just touch on microlearning. I'm assuming, and maybe I shouldn't assume, everybody knows what microlearning is here. So we won't spend too much time on that, but we'll get right into Gen Z. We'll talk a little bit about the psychology that I think is useful in enablement. Some learning styles, although I did hear that maybe the science is not correct on learning styles. I think I saw that in the chat. So hopefully my data is not something throwaway, but we'll see what you guys think. And then we'll end off with something I call the 10-year-old principle. So you'll have to see what that is. And then lastly, using humor. And in fact, Owen, you did a great job, and we're a great lead in to that part of the discussion today. So with that, so on microlearning, again, assuming everyone knows what microlearning is, but I think just to set the stage, I think the key here is some of the old ways of training are no longer working, right? And we're competing for attention more than ever before. And this isn't just true for media or advertising marketing. It applies to enablement, right? So again, thinking about who are we enabling and where do they come from and what are they used to? It matters, right? So we're competing for attention, and consumption of social media is increasing, and so and frankly, new social media channels and different apps are creating different behaviors, and so your learners are coming into the workplace accustomed to whatever those things are. In particular, things are coming faster, right? So faster. And so the expectations in terms of delivery and application are increasing, not decreasing. Also, technology is in a constant state of change. It hasn't just changed once. It changes all the time. In fact, I just got my new iPhone. What is this? 14? I don't know. Anyway, the only reason I got it was for the camera, but regardless, everyone's upgrading all the time, right? So we're in a constant state of change as it relates to technology. So we've got to keep up, right? And we've got to meet people where they're at. And then at the end of the day, I think the sum of the stats, and you guys can challenge these stats, but Deloitte will tell you that formal e-learning content only ever amounts to 10% of what people learn at work. So in the chat, if you disagree, I'd love to hear, but that's the stat that Deloitte uses. So again, scary statistics as it relates to the formats and the ways that we train. Some of the old methodology just isn't working on these new generations. I came from a generation, you saw, I'm X. Well, by the way, enablement wasn't really a formalized thing in the workplace when I came into it. And I'm used to reading a lot. I'm used to seeking information. I have a different point of view that I'm bringing to the way that I've learned information. And that differs from, a technology driven generation or generations. So anyway, enter microlearning, which is a fantastic way to meet people where they are today. And so again, many of you probably know this, but it has the potential to harness a lot of the trends where, most of us would be like, oh, this is concerning, but we can harness those trends for these new generations of learners. All right. So that's my one spiel about microlearning. So let's talk about Gen Z. So this is my personal favorite. I think I said that. I've done a lot of research on it. And I've talked to my team, and we've, tossed around like, how do you enable Gen Z? By the way, I've talked to some very senior people at very important technologies that most of you use, high spot, and ask them this question, how are you innovating to address the needs of these new generations, right? Like think about, I've got a 21-year-old, I've got an 18-year-old, I've got a 10-year-old. The two older ones are on their phones constantly. They're flipping through TikTok. And by the way, if you start doing that, it is a rabbit hole of rabbit holes. I now know why it's so addictive. And I guess that makes me a little out of it. But you can spend a ton of time just flipping through content and it happens automatically. So suddenly an hour goes by. I don't know what I was doing. I was watching something. Anyway, so we've got this technology out there. So I asked, hey, how are we innovating to meet people where they are to, kind of fit the style that they are accustomed to? So by the way, no answer on that. And so anyway, the Gen Z are the first digital natives, which means they've grown up with a phone in their hand, like from baby. I remember giving my 10-year-old an iPad when he was 4. And that was a big deal. Okay. But this is like, there's never been a world where technology has not been a part of it for these generations. I mean, I had a rotary phone, so let's not even talk about that. But, and then there's everything in between, right? And so again, you've got digital natives, social media has evolved, right? Like Facebook was first, maybe, and then we got Instagram. And I know a lot of my fellow Gen Xers and millennials love Instagram. It's beautiful. Now we've got Snapchat. My kids are on Snapchat. I don't even understand it, but anyhow, and Twitter and all these things. And so things are getting faster, shorter. And these are the go-to apps that they get their information from, they communicate through, and everything comes to them as, it's immediate, right? So something happens, you get immediate feedback. You're immediately communicating with people. You're communicating all day long on Snapchat, right? So these are the things that are a part of this generation. In addition to, by the way, all these other things that are happening all around them. But rapid delivery is another key piece, right? AI has trained our marketing, has trained, we've got Amazon, right? I can get something from Amazon to my door faster than I would actually get it going to the store and getting it myself. That's revolutionary. And it's been around since this generation has been coming up, right? So they're accustomed to things being customized to them, things coming to them. Again, not to make myself sound old, but I used to pull out a paper map. I don't know, anyone in the chat here with me on this? A Rand McNally map. If I needed directions, I had to pull it out and look at the street names and map my route. Now you have obviously Siri that can tell you on the phone, put it in your car. You don't have to do any deciding or thinking. Really, all you have to do is tell Siri to do it for you, and it's there. So totally different world where things are delivered to us now. And again, this all relates to, this is the generation that we're enabling, right? And so all of this to say, this is a unique generation for many reasons, for great reasons. And I think adjusting our mindsets around that is important when it comes to how they learn, how they consume, and how they stay engaged with information. They're tech savvy, expecting maybe instant gratification. They want answers now. They're used to that, right? Delivered to them. Maybe they don't even want to think about the answers. They just want the answers to show up wherever they are. They're all about short responses, quick communication. They can process. Now you hear all these sort of like attention span problems, like the goldfish thing, which, but the stat is 8 seconds for this generation. Okay. It was 12 for millennials. That's the stat. Debate me. I don't know. It's not my stat. But regardless, I think it's all about processing information faster. So we hear about attention span. Well, that sounds like a negative. But the fact of the matter is, this is a generation that's been used to getting information quicker and processing faster. So actually, I think you can harness that. They're more connected with than previous generations and more social, incredibly social, actually. It doesn't seem like it. I mean, look at this photo. It doesn't look social to someone like me. But actually, to them, they're incredibly social, connected, and they have a big community, and they're able to access and communicate much more frequently than we were. And anyway, all this to say, right, it can be intimidating for us prior generations to think about, how do we actually harness this group? How do we teach them concepts? But it shouldn't be intimidating. Just have to understand it, have to kind of adjust, and hence why micro learning is a great component to that. It says here on the screen, 29% of managers expect training them to be difficult. Well, I actually would disagree, by the way, with this. I actually think, given the technology we have at our fingertips today, if we're leaning into it, as we saw Owen doing right a second ago with his techniques, and obviously we've got 7 taps, right? So if we're leaning in and thinking about this in this way, actually, maybe it makes our job easier. I don't know. Let's see. Let's find out, right? And then at the end of the day, I think it's really, again, about like understanding and harnessing all of these different aspects in your enablement plans, right? All right. So we're going to talk about learning styles. Although, again, I heard somebody earlier say learning styles are debunked. But I'll just tell you what the stats tell you. So not surprisingly, based on all the things we just discussed about Gen Z, they want a hands-on, collaborative style of learning. Ideally, I think they like in-person. Now, of course, we're challenged with in-person learning. but on the job training. So hands on. I always use this story about when I was in college, and this was when I was young. I became a barista. I made coffee, right? I wasn't at Starbucks, but anyway. And, you go to this job and you learn how to use this machine, this espresso machine. And it was a big, complicated machine. So I spent a week just learning that, and practicing and practicing and practicing. And I was not serving any customers at that point. The week after that, I'm on the job making coffee for customers using that machine. So, so these are the hands-on ways that, those kind of jobs and training can match well. It's difficult in our virtual environment. We're teaching people things over computer screens. And so obviously that can make it challenging, but there's probably a way to harness collaboration regardless, right? So thinking about the generation and what's going to work for them. That's what they want, right? And so you can see here, and I know there's a lot of Zoom meetings out there, but listening is not a good way for this group to learn. Frankly, I don't like learning this way either. It can be a part of, right? But exclusively listening isn't a great way for this generation, at least, to retain information, speeches, lectures, things like that. So those are things to kind of put in your plan, but not primary, right? So as you build out. All right. So let's talk about psychology. Like, why does psychology matter? Well, psychology matters because to enhance your strategy, it's good to understand the motivators and the needs of any learner, but this generation in particular, right? So what motivates Gen Z? Money. Okay. So more than half surveyed of Gen Z would learn professional skills to make more money. I mean, maybe that sounds like no-brainer, right? Duh. Maybe there's a way that you can actually leverage that motivator. Okay. So money, promotion, 46% said they would learn. And you guys keep me honest in the chat, which I cannot see, by the way. So Chris, you'll have to tell me. 46% said they would learn in order to get a promotion. I mean, I'm not surprised, but again, how do you utilize promotions as a driver? Impressing their boss. Okay, so we want to impress the boss. It's all about impressions. I've got my impressions and I want to make sure I'm getting noticed or impressing my manager or my boss, whatever. And lastly, I want to avoid failure. I know that sounds like the opposite of what we should say is like success, but actually it's a key psychological factor for Gen Z is they're afraid of failure. 62% are afraid of making a bad impression and 23% have a very high fear of failure. Don't know where that comes from, by the way, but that's interesting to know, right? So, what do they need based on these motivators from their training or enablement? They want to be independent. They want to fully self-direct and, be on their own. They're very used to being autonomous in a lot of things. And that's part of what they want. 43% said, right? Simple, fast, concise. 58% said they want to learn a new skill, but they don't believe they have the time. Who has the time to learn a new skill? I don't, but they really don't believe that, right? So simple and fast, as they're trying to absorb everything else is probably a good way to go. Those are things that resonate. And lastly, hard skills versus soft skills. 62% believe hard skills are more important than soft skills. I think that speaks to, where you are in your career, perhaps, but either way, good to know what they would prioritize, right? So if you have a soft skill on one side and learning some, basics of doing the job on the other, they're going to pick that, right? So again, utilizing psychology, the motivating factors to increase engagement of your enablement, tie your programs to financial incentives. I don't know. Mapping your enablement to career progressions, not just competencies, but progressions. Like how can we bring those two closer so that the programs actually build, right, into some sort of career progression. Leadership reinforcement and recognition. This one's key, not only for participation. Where are my sales enablement peeps at? You got to have your sales leader bought in. Otherwise, good luck. But reinforcement and recognition also to to utilize that motivator of impressing the boss, right? So if I get an attaboy or kudos from a senior leader or a boss or whatever, that's going to be a great experience for me as a learner, right? So recognition, reinforcement, and then last, prioritize the what over the how. The soft skills, those are things that actually I just think of my own path are kind of advanced, right? You got to learn how to sell before you can learn like the finite techniques, right? So some of the basics have to be a foundation before you can say, okay, well, here's how I don't know, it's some technique, right, that I can improve on, etc. So those are some ways that you can, pull these motivators into your program. Okay, so my favorite part, the 10-year-old principle. Nobody's heard of this because I made it up. So the 10-year-old principle, as you think about this generation and your microlearning plans, you can apply what I call the 10-year-old principle to ensure retention of the information or of the topic. So you might ask yourself, what do 10-year-olds have to do with enablement? Well, so to answer this question, let's consider the question of how to eat an elephant. Anyone know the answer? How do you eat an elephant? Okay, come on. All right, everybody knows. One bite or one bite-sized training at a time, right? So, taking complex topics, breaking them down into smaller chunks, simpler sections, and better effectiveness, right? This is this. What does the 10-year-old principle have to do with that? Well, so this is my son, by the way. Isn't he cute? Specifically, the 10-year-old principle is I make my 10-year-old son take the trainings, and then I gauge, can he learn the concept? If he can learn the concept, then anybody can learn the concept. Is it simple enough for a 10-year-old to digest? Especially when we're talking about highly complex subjects, brand new product, brand new topics, that really should be probably a college course. We try to pack it all into one session or two. We try to pack it all into one e-learning or a certification, right? But what people really need is one bite at a time, right? And so my 10-year-old is my guinea pig. As you can see here, that's the 10-year-old principle. But not only will he learn the concept, but will he pay attention? Right? He has the same attention span that I think I'm working with. And so is it engaging for him? Now, of course, he's not my only gauge, right? But this is a principle you can apply if you have a 10-year-old, or if you don't, find somebody who does. And just thinking about this in a way of bite size, right? So breaking things down. This is how I have seen it be effective in our microlearning. All right, so we got that. Now let's talk about humor. And Owen, you did a fantastic job with this. So it was great setting the stage. But who doesn't like to laugh? Actually, now, again, I'm using science. So hopefully this isn't garbage science. But science does tell us that a good laugh can have a lot of positive benefits, right? I think that's a no-brainer. But one stat tells us that it can make our muscles relaxed for up to 45 minutes after a good laugh. That's pretty cool. Laughing lowers stress hormones, cortisol, and activates the reward system in your brain, swapping cortisol in the bloodstream with highly sought after dopamine, oxytocin, and endorphins, right? So, all right, like we all love to laugh. Why can't we laugh at work? Why can't we laugh in training, right? Like, why can't we have a little laugh? It can enhance learning, motivation, and, attention. Humor can be all of those things. So ultimately, adding humor can help learners to associate positive emotions with their learning experience. Positive emotions are good things when you're putting people through training on boring topics, right? This will naturally lead to increased interest and attention, but also, delighting and engaging your users. So remember, Gen Z learners are accustomed to being entertained. They have seen entertainment in every media format since they were young. So they actually expect to be entertained when they show up to something, right? So adding this in can actually enhance not only their experience, but your actual outcome from those trainings. or from the microlearning itself. So let's take a look at some examples. And by the way, big shout out to my team, particularly Andy Courtney, who may or may not be on this presentation today. But let's look at some examples of what our team has done to incorporate some humor, some wit, some whimsy, right? So some unique and attention-grabbing ways to take a complex topic and sustain attention to increase learning retention. So let's see if this works.
Ultimately, what people buy CDP is unify customer data, enable people to segment that data on their own without having to go to technical resources, much the same way we talk about analytics, and then to activate that data into marketing channels, principally marketing, sometimes advertising channels.
All right, one more.
Case in point, this little guy has a problem. He's fresh out cookies. Time to order more. So he logs into his favorite cookie delivery app, makes a selection, follows a few prompts, and voila. He later receives a text message with a delivery update and survey. 1 hour later.
All right, just a couple examples of how we've incorporated some whimsy, some humor into some of our micro learning to grab attention and sustain attention. Also increasing learning retention. I know it seems silly, but believe me, it works. All right, let's look at a few more. So here I've got a bunch, right? Perfect Gen Z slide right here. There's tons to do. We've incorporated TikTok memes and short clips into our 7-tap series on Tech Tuesdays, for example. Let's see this one.
Boom, click and go back this way. Over here, click and go that way. Boom, that way. Click here and go back this way.
That's one of my personal favorites. But then there's this.
Come on. Here we go. Open into the hanger. There you go. Yeah, eat it. Put it in your mouth. You just eat it. You can I don't care whether you hate it. You say you do it. All right. Eat it.
All right. Love The Office. I saw Owen pulled one of those as well. We also built out a themed 7-taps for Spooktober in partnership with our Deal Desk. Deal Desk, not always like, the sexiest topic ever is contract negotiations and structuring your deals, right? But Deal Desk helped us get creative with Spooktober and participated in creating this video.
This is paranormal ARR activity. Our customer reaches out to the AE. They need additional volume and they need it now. They won't supersede or replace. They want a co-term. Our AE drafts a quote. He's happy. He tells his RSD, I got 20K new ARR coming in this month that I wasn't expecting. He submits his quote for approval. Then, all of a sudden, the ARR is gone. Where's it gone?
All right, that goes on, but you can see how it kind of fits in there below on Deal Horror Stories. There was a whole series there. And last but not least,
Hi, Amplitudes. We have two major announcements for you on behalf of the global GTM enablement team. You asked and we delivered. You said the online modules were long. You said you wanted more interaction. Well, guess what? We're introducing new mini courses. What else is mini? Mini Cooper? Mini Golf? What does mini mean exactly? The dictionary says smaller or more limited in size, scope, or extent, which is appropriate because each mini course is made up of short lessons that each take about 5 minutes to complete.
5 minutes
And
long.
they contain tons of interactivity. You'll learn everything you need to know in these bite-sized courses, and they're meant to be.
All right. So that's just a few examples of ways to incorporate humor, interaction, some things they're familiar with, right? TikTok memes. You can see one in the bottom corner there. And there's more I could share, but I think you get the idea, right? Finding, opportunities to include this in your program or in your micro learning, I think can, increase the engagement over time, but also feel really familiar. We're talking about Gen Z, right? I think it can actually feel like a very relatable way of communicating, or growing knowledge or competency. Let's see if I can, oops, I messed up. There we go. Uh-oh. All right. So ultimately, I'm going to land this plane. I know everybody's probably ready to go. Microlearning fits like a glove, right? Like I said, it's easy to access on a phone. It can be similar to social media. It comes in quick, short formats that break down larger topics. It doesn't require a lot of time and can be consumed independently, and it doesn't feel like a formal training. And Gen Z looks for practical, relevant content in their training programs. They look for what they know. The difference is they want it immediately. They want it to be personalized, engaging, and they want it where they want it, right? So, and they want to be actively involved in training as well. Now, as far as microlearning is concerned, I think sticking to formats that are easy, that they can access anywhere. Those are some great tips in terms of enabling using microlearning, right? So takeaways, replace traditional methods with microlearning. That's just a no-brainer. If you're not doing that already, I'm glad you're here to hear that, because the shorter the bite size, the more bite size, the better, in particular to reinforce concepts or break down complex concepts and engage your learners in these newer generations. Relevant, fast, and mobile. Don't waste my time. And I can process information really fast, and I want it on my phone. That's Gen Z, right? That's the nutshell right there. Leveraging the motivations, right? Remember, we looked through what motivates this generation. How do you connect those dots in your programs so that you get additional engagement? Making sure that things are accessible, self-driven, hands-on. Those were the learning styles. Making concepts simple, using the 10-year-old principle, or whoever you have in your household that might be like a 10-year-old, to evaluate whether this is easy for anybody to learn. And then obviously building from there. And then lastly, using humor, because this generation expects to be entertained. They don't even expect it. It's a natural part of their world. Even our advertising is entertainment for them now. So those are kind of the takeaways that I hope you got from today. Thank you so much for having me. I hope you enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Megan, for that one. Let's give a big round of emojis for Megan and all of that. That was fantastic. So thank you for that. And I think one of the things that just kept coming up as we were talking about some of the generational stuff is the fact that there's been stereotypes about generations for eons. I mean, I remember the boomers were called the me generation, then the millennials were called, the most, and I think so much of it's more complex than we often think about, whether it's stages in life and all that stuff. I think the point that I've heard consistently throughout this is just to be intentional and disciplined in how you think about the diversity of your audience. So thank you so much.